Hi guys, welcome back to the Swing Guitar Blog. My name is Jonathan Stout, and today we're doing another new Guitar Day post, and this is what I've sort of been waiting for a long time, and this is a 1932 Gibson L-5. For those of you who've been keeping up with the YouTube channel and sort of my blog posts, I have been on a quest for kind of the guitar, and I think I sort of have it. And it's definitely what I had been looking for the whole time, but it's definitely something where I feel that the L12 that I picked up and then the 32 Deluxe, Epiphone Deluxe, were both really interesting learning experiences as far as what I'm looking for in a guitar. And at presently I'm planning to keep both of them just because they both offer something a little bit different. And as far as being a sheer canon and getting projection, the Deluxe is really hard to beat. I bought the Calton case that the previous owner had made for it, and as far as like a travel guitar, it's pretty wonderful, and I do really enjoy playing it. But this is what I kind of had always been looking for, and let me tell you about it. This is a 16-inch 1932 Gibson L5. It has beautiful flame maple back, beautiful flame maple neck. I'm not sure what the insert piece is. Ebony fingerboard, spruce top, maple back and sides, or maple sides, of course. The pickguard is a reproduction from Joe Vinico at archtop.com. I recently put that on. Bridge is ebony and original, and tailpiece is original. So basically the only thing that's ever been changed on this guitar is a new pickguard has been put on. The Gibson L5 was the first archtop guitar ever designed by Gibson engineer Lloyd Lohr after the success of his F5 mandolins. And they were introduced, the first model apparently rolled off around 1923 or 24. And the first generation of those had a birch back instead of maple, and was often fitted with sort of an internal resonating device, sort of like what the original Selmer Macafferys had. After Lloyd Lohr left the company, like within a couple of years, that second generation, those are generally the most valuable and the most esteemed guitars, and those still have a dot neck. They've gone to maple back and sides, and those are just often thought of as ideal. Those are also the most expensive. This one is from the third generation of L5s, which was from about 1929 or so up until 1934. At 1934, they upsized the guitar, making it a 17-inch guitar. And as I talked about on the L12 video, the bracing went from parallel to X bracing, and they kept it X bracing until 1939 when they introduced the cutaway. And so once they did that, they went back to parallel on all of the guitars. The main difference of the sort of second generation guitars versus the third generation guitars, that pre-29 or post-29 guitar, is the block inlays. But the bigger difference, because this is purely cosmetic, the bigger difference, and often I think the reason why they're not thought of as highly, is because Gibson started doing something to cut costs and shave off some time. And the braces that go underneath the archtop have to be perfectly carved to fit the interior curve of that guitar, and that's challenging. That takes time, takes effort. If it's not lined up perfectly, it's not going to work. But at some point in 29, somebody thought, hey, we could save some time if we put some slits in the brace and then just flexed it into shape. And if you look at the inside of a guitar, there is something called kerfing, which is that scalloped piece of wood that runs along the side that connects the top or back to the side on either side. And it's basically similar to that, where they put slits in it so that they could flex it into shape, and that way it would fit more easily. Those are generally not thought of as sounding as good. And from my experience, I think that's true. I would also say that the curved ones still sound pretty good, but there's a sort of another level beyond that with the solid braced ones. And so anytime you can get a solid braced guitar and not have to pay a dot neck price for it, if you know what I mean, you're sort of doing a good thing. A famous archtop dealer who I will leave the name out of, who's a friend, has a 28 L5 that had been sent back to the factory and re-necked, and so it had a block inlay later 30s neck, but it was put on by Gibson, and it's put on as well as anything, but you had this body that was the perfect body. He paid way less for it than it would have been if it had been unmolested, and frankly, it sounds better than almost all the dot necks that he'd ever played, and it sounded amazing. I believe Matt Monastery's Gibson L5 is a dot neck that had been re-necked, or at least the fingerboard had been redone on by Gibson. So it doesn't have a dot neck, but it's got that dot neck sound. I'd like to think that this guitar has that dot neck sound based on the fact that the braces are solid. And like I said, from my experience of how I bought the guitar and then some later comparisons I've done, I think it does have that. The story of how I got this guitar is sort of one of those you had to be there things, and it was sort of an opportunity that was too good to pass up. With guitars of this quality and of this kind of rarity, you're basically looking online, and you're lucky if a dealer near you gets one in every once in a while. And unless you live in a place like New York or Los Angeles, or where there's a vintage guitar dealer of note there, you're not going to see this unless it's on the internet, and you're not going to be able to play it before you order it, and you're going to have to hope you bond with it. It's not like you're going to be able to compare this to several other similar guitars in the same store. When I went to visit Seattle a couple years ago, I did stop in at archtop.com, for example, and I played a bunch of guitars. And at the time, they did not have an acoustic L5 that I'm aware of, either small body or large body, at least not for sale. And so, that's a really reputable dealer with a large inventory. And if they don't have more than one, or one at all, what does that say about the rest? So even a place like Gruen right now, I think, has two, and that's a huge anomaly, and that's very rare, and they hadn't had one for a while. So I'd bought the L12 and the 32 Deluxe, and I was more or less set, and I was pretty content with both of those, and it was sort of a done deal. And I went into Norm's Rare Guitars. Norman's Rare Guitars is here in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley, where I grew up. And I happened to be on a lunch break from my day job and stopped in just for, why not? And as it turns out, they had just purchased probably the largest single purchase of archtop guitars ever in one transaction. They purchased $1.5 million of mostly acoustic archtops from a guitar collector who had gotten into trouble with the IRS, from what I've heard. And again, I can't say that for sure, but there was an auction last year that was terribly unsuccessful, where he tried to unload a bunch of his guitars, and because of flooding the market and because the reserves were set too high, basically almost nothing sold, and what did sell sold for way under what it was supposed to. So when I went into Norm's, they had like 40 or 50 of some of the greatest acoustic archtops I've seen in a long time. And they have there was a Stromberg Master 400, and that wasn't the only one. Apparently, there was another one that I didn't even see. There were a variety of Epiphones, a variety of Gibsons, at least 5 D'Angelicos, and I can't think of the last time that I've been to a guitar store that had more than one D'Angelico, if any at all, even then, that's a serious dealer that's going to be able to trade in D'Angelicos, and to have more than one. I mean, maybe the Sam Ash on 48th Street in New York that used to be Rudy's has like the legacy collection from Rudy's of their guitars. But I mean, this is not normal to find 5 really good D'Angelicos all in the same place. And they were really cool, and they let me play through basically everything. And I ended up shooting a little video for them, and I guess it didn't turn out because I never posted it, but I basically demoed 3 different amazing D'Angelicos, a 16-inch, a 17-inch, and an 18-inch. One was a snakehead 16-inch. There was a blonde 17-inch Excel that was made for a family member of his with the inlay of Bob, which you can still see on their website. And then there was a late 30s, early 40s New Yorker full 18-inch. And then just playing those 3 guitars back to back was a huge learning experience for me. And really cool. They had a very early advanced L5, 17-inch L5. They said it was from 34, who knows, 34, 35. But it was really early. It still had wide inlays, so it was definitely early. And that really caught my attention. And then there was also a small body, they marked it as a 32, but it's probably a 34 or something, L5. With block inlays that was out on the stand, and I really loved that guitar, but the price point was just a little more than I thought I could bear, and the 17-inch guitar was a little bit cheaper, and I thought, I think I might be able to make that happen. So I went home and I sort of thought about it. I ruminated on the guitars that I did have and what I was getting out of them, and trying to understand what is better. There's a lot of different, but what would be better for me and what would I enjoy more? I went back to Norm's and I brought my L12 and the Deluxe with me. I think I was sort of hoping that I might be able to get some reasonable trade-in value for the L12, but it's not really worth as much to them when they've got several L5s and several D'Angelicos. Even an early 35 L12 is not that interesting to them. And it's definitely not in like a superb collector's condition as far as being mint or anything. Even if it does sound good, they don't really care. It's what it can fetch. So it really wasn't, whatever they'd give me for it, it really wasn't worth it, to me at least. But I wanted to hear what the guitars sounded like against the guitars I already had. And what I've been finding is that my expectations are often very much color my perceptions of what I'm hearing. And so, like, if you've been watching the videos, I hated the 32 Deluxe when I first got it because I didn't get what it does and how it's different from the L12. And my expectations were that it would be the L12 all over again, and that's not really what it does, and it's not what it should do. And if you followed my videos, you know that for what I do on a day-to-day basis, the Deluxe is really a much more appropriate guitar. So I brought those in. Now Norm's is not the room is really big and it's carpeted. And I mean, it's a huge room. So you're not getting you're not getting any echo off the walls, because they're so far away and it's carpeted. So you really are hearing the guitar as naked as possible. And a lot of times it's not very flattering, but it does mean that you're hearing the guitar as nakedly as possible. It's not getting any help from the room. And it was fascinating because the early advanced L5 that I sort of thought was doable really sounded more or less like my L12, but for maybe a slightly better playing fretboard, and the slight zing of the ebony fingerboard. It was very fascinating, though, to be able to like parse out, I think that's the tonality of an ebony fingerboard as opposed to a rosewood fingerboard. And that was definitely fascinating. But it really wasn't worth just upgrading from there, and especially because I wouldn't get anything for my L12, and it was going to do the same thing again. But I did look back at the 16-inch guitar and really, really fell in love with it. I really thought, okay, this combines the best of the both worlds. It really has the speaking easy that I find in the L12, where it speaks very quickly, but it does have sort of the punch and projection of the Deluxe. It had, like I said, it has the richness and ease of speaking, but it still has punch, and that's sort of ideal. And for the longest time, I played an Eastman Still have it, and that was a 16-inch guitar, and I still feel like 16-inch guitars are sort of my jam. But what was interesting is, I kind of fell in love with this guitar out on the stand, but I decided to go home and sort of talk it over, and I got to get clearance from the wife before I'm going to make any major purchases, and it was definitely something that was a bit more expensive than I had planned. But when I thought about it, and I thought about when would I ever get to try out a guitar among so many other guitars and really hear the differences. I had just been in New York, and at TR Crandall they had a bunch of L10s and some L5s and stuff, and that was really illustrative to hear them all together and understand what they sounded like. But I went to Retrofret, and just that day of the week they had maybe 3 or 4 really great arch tops, but they didn't have 10. And it was a low inventory day, and they've got a bunch of really great stuff on their website right now, but they had less, and so it was harder to get an idea. And like, they had a really great D'Angelico, but not being able to hear that D'Angelico against an L5 or something also interesting made the playing the D'Angelico less. I could compare it to less, so I really appreciated, like I said, being able to try the L5 that I liked at Norm's against all of the other guitars they had there, all these various D'Angelicos and Strombergs. There was a 34 Epi Deluxe that was basically just like my 32, and so it's fascinating. I get the Stones to go buy this thing, and I knew I was going to play it for like a good hour before I was going to give them the money for it. But it occurred to me when I walked in that there were a whole bunch of cases sitting on the floor that weren't even open. And there were a whole bunch of guitars I hadn't even seen. And so as it turns out, there were 5 pre-1934 16-inch L5s in the building that day. And I don't think anybody's seen 5 L5s like that in the same place in a retail store probably since the 30s. And it was profound. There was a special order with banjo inlays from, I believe, 1930. That guitar was priced at something like $30,000 and wasn't even set up well, and the pickguard was gassing off, so all the strings were corroded. It was just like, if somebody's got the scratch to do that, that's great, but it was kind of a non-issue. But of the 4 that were in playing shape, there was a beautiful 28 dot neck L5 with the original pickguard intact that was really nice, and then 3 block neck ones. The dates on the tags weren't really accurate, but the interesting thing was I really played all 3 of them, all 3 of the block neck ones back to back, and then I played the 28 and really kind of figured out. And basically this one was not the one that was out on the stand that I'd fallen in love with. This was another one that was in the case, and it basically sounded to me as good as the 28, but was a lot cheaper, thousands and thousands of dollars cheaper, which considering it was already way over budget was a relief. I had a hunch that this one was substantively different than the other 2 block neck inlays, and because there's a repair shop at the back of the store, I took all 3 of the block neck ones back there, and as it turns out, the 2 that I really liked but didn't buy all had kerfed bracing, and this one does not have kerfed bracing. So basically this is the same construction as a 28 without the dot neck inlay. And the neck on this one does seem to be more of an old style neck. The fact that it says the Gibson means that the headstock inlay at least was a little bit made a little bit earlier. It does not have a pointed fingerboard end, which means it's a little bit later. And that's the thing about Gibsons from this era and from much of the pre-1950s. They were messing around with specs all the time. And I think it was Joe Vinico that told me he has something called the 10% rule. That is, 10% of vintage Gibsons from that era are just not, they're not going to meet the specifications of what you'd expect, because either it was a custom order, it was a prototype, it was a one-off, they were reusing leftover parts, or somebody came in hungover and they just grabbed the wrong neck and, you know, it was too late to stop, so they just finished the guitar anyway. So this is sort of a mixture of features. It is decidedly the later neck style, at least from that non-pointed end and the block inlays, but it does seem to be that the construction on all of the other fronts is the earlier style. The bridge is original, which to me seems to be like a huge deal, because I think they did a much better job of fitting the top to the guitar in the 20s and 30s than they did in some of the later, or at least maybe until the 40s. I don't know, but it definitely seems like, you know, the later you go, the less craft was taken as seriously because it was close enough. So basically, I picked this one out of the litter and pulled it out of the original case that I have for it, and it really spoke to me. It is, like I said, punchy, but still warm. It's sort of the best hybrid, and I felt like to find something that does the chord melody thing as well as the L-12 does, while having the punch and projection of the deluxe, you know, there might be something about, to do either well, it sort of has to only do that one job, and you can't really do both at the same time. But this sort of bears out that you really can do both at the same time. This does not have the sheer projection that the deluxe does, and if I were going to a louder gig, or if I were on a big band gig where I thought I really needed every chance to be heard, I would probably bring the deluxe. But I'm guessing that the way I mic my guitars, using a lavalier mic, I'll probably be fine with this. I've done gigs on this with a lavalier mic, and it sounds amazing. So let me play a little bit for you. The low strings seem to be really pianistic, and they're just... so it sounds really warm, but it does have... super punchy on the D and G strings. It's funny, I can see the VU meter clipping when I really dig into it. So it's really no surprise. The dynamic range on it is really surprising and really impressive. And the thing I was finding with the Epiphone was that either because it's a slightly bigger guitar, maybe because it's the way Epiphone is, maybe because it was refinished, it felt hard. The finish feels hard. The whole guitar feels a little bit stiff. It's not as light as I would expect, and it just feels stiff. Now, when you crank into a guitar that is like that, it can really be a cannon, because it's holding tight and the top is flexing. And so the rest of the guitar is really being secure for it. But it doesn't have the sensitivity when you're playing it all by itself. And just for playing at home around the house, I was finding it less appealing. And I spent a lot of time playing the L-12 at home, but not playing the deluxe unless I was on a gig. And so this really does both things really well. And the highs are really beautiful and crisp. It's got this nice mid-range punchiness, and the lows are really focused and not boomy, but just really right there. So I've been working on chord melody a ton. I just posted a transcript. I just posted of chord melody on Sunday. The song Sunday, not the day Sunday, but the song Sunday. And there's also a transcription at the blog at swingguitarblog.com. But the reason I've been working on all that stuff so much is the guitar is so inspiring to play with that style. But let me give you a little bit of some more stuff. with something called Home, aka When the Shadows Fall. What else can I do for you? Just by way of comparison, here's what Ain't Misbehavin' sounds like. I did record that on both the other two guitars, so if you want to cross-reference it. The miking position isn't exactly the same, but hopefully you get some idea of the tonal character. Well, what else can I do for you guys? The bass strings really sound rich, and there's just so much, and there's an integrity there, so they don't get woofy. It's just really focused. The shorter scale length does allow me to do some voicings that I can't quite pull off on the deluxe, and the nut width is a little bit wider, and the string spacing is a little bit wider. So it really has become the ideal guitar for doing all of that chord melody stuff, while at the same time being able to play leads and stuff without any problem. The original 1932 tuning pegs are still on here, and those are a little bit problematic. Not as bad as the ones on my L-12. Definitely not as good as the ones on the Deluxe. The tuning machines are still really excellent. These are fine. The strings on here aren't super new either. This came with 12s. I bumped up the high E and B, as I'm wont to do, to a 13 and a 17. But I ended up putting 13s back on it with a 14 and an 18, and I think I'm digging that. I think I like that. And in the smaller scale, sort of, I can get away with it a little bit more, whereas the Deluxe just was not having it, and neither was the L-12. The L-12 is actually at Westwood Music, my preferred repair shop, and the neck is getting plecked because it's set up really well, but there's still some spots on it that just aren't ringing out properly. And when it comes down to just like a high fret here and a low fret there, and you just got to sort of, do it all, having it plecked is a great way to do it because it sort of scans the whole neck, and it's a lot more eagle-eyed than even a really good eye. So it does have 13s. Right now I've got DR, their 8020s on here. I did try the Martin Monell, and those sounded awesome. The Tony Rice ones sounded really good on this. Definitely punchy, definitely zingy, definitely not as rich on the bass end, but I might put them back on there and see. The only thing about the Tony Rice strings from Martin that I do really love them, but the gauges are a little bit weird. They're a little bit lighter through the middle, and the DRs are more standard. It's definitely a 26, 36, 46, 56. And so you get the full tension on the middle strings, which I prefer. But I'm thinking I'll probably swap the Monells on next. I have also tried my beloved Martin SP 8020s on here. Sounds great as well. And again, just trying the DRs because the DRs seem like they're designed for just sheer projection, and I kind of like that as a goal. But like I said, the Monells sound really good. And even the SPs sound really good. Anyway, I'm going to be playing this a bunch more. It was in the shop for an extended period of time, so I didn't get to play it for about 6 weeks. And before it went in the shop, I did get to play it at the International Lindy Hop Championships, and I played that with the Campus 5, and that was a 1,000-person event, big room, pro sound, using my lavalier mic, had absolutely no problems with it, even in a pretty high SPL situation. Obviously a good sound guy it was on it, and proper monitor placement, but it sounded amazing. And then since then I haven't gotten to use it on nearly as much stuff because we just haven't had anything. And the few gigs we've had have been with our Grand Slam Sextet, which is our Benny Goodman Sextet band, and that's all playing my ES 150. So I haven't really gotten a chance to get this out as much. But you know what I did do the day after I got it back. My good friend Dan Levinson, clarinet player from New York, was in town with his wife, the fantastic vocalist Molly Ryan, and they did a little gig around the corner from our house, and hired me to play guitar along with my friend Marcus Howell on bass. And I played acoustic with the lavalier mic for 2 sets, variety of different traditional jazz stuff, and it was a lot of guitar playing because I was the only chordal instrument. It was basically bass, sax or clarinet, and Molly and me. So I did cycle through all 3 of my acoustic archtops. The L-12 did wonderfully in that environment because there wasn't a lot of competition. So that was really nice. The Deluxe sounded just fantastic, really projects. But this just sort of had the best of both worlds, and I think that's what I was looking for. And another interesting thing, I did have a chance to visit one of my friends in Colorado, the owner of Old Town Pick and Parlor, and he's got a really great L-5 that was one of the guitars that I thought of as the exemplars of what I wanted in a really great guitar, and so I was able to compare the two, and I mean his sounds really good, but this totally held its own. So I was really excited by that, and I believe his is a 28 with with a new fingerboard or something. So anyway, I'll play you guys out with something I've been working on, a little T for 2. Anyway, my name is Jonathan Stout. This is the Swing Guitar Blog. I hope to be bringing you guys more lessons and substantive stuff now that the great guitar quest of 2015 has more or less come to an end. I could give you my guitar wish list for what else I'd like, but nobody really wants to hear that. So, all right, here we go with a little bit of T for 2. This is why I haven't put up a video of playing this song yet. All right, we'll see you guys next time, and I'm sure the next time you hear me play that song, it'll probably be pulled off a lot better. See you guys next time.